Another candidate throws his hat in the ring to challenge Mayor Lori Lightfoot for her job in an election that is now just 10.5 months away. Plus, some end of session action from Springfield with our Spotlight Politics team. Welcome back, Amanda Venicky, Heather Sharon, and Paris Schutz. So let's start with this. Former Alderman Danny Solis formally pleads not guilty to a federal bribery charge. Heather, tell us a little bit about what happened today and about that agreement that Solis had with federal prosecutors.
Well, this was supposed to be a very pro forma hearing. This was just supposed to start the clock ticking on this 3-year deferred prosecution agreement, which at the end of it promises Danny Solis will not do a single day in jail or lose his city pension, even though he has admitted taking bribes while he served as chairman of the city council's zoning committee. Now, that was what was supposed to happen. It all came to a screeching halt when an assistant U.S. attorney told the judge in the case, hey, the city wants to intervene in this case because they contend that everybody in the city and the city itself was a victim of Danny Solis's crime. So the judge basically delayed everything for a week to give the city a chance to make that argument. In a statement after the hearing, Mayor Lori Lightfoot said that was exactly what she planned to do, and that Solis deserved to be held accountable for his crimes against the people of Chicago, and she was determined to ask the federal court to make that happen. What that means, we're not really sure.
Paris, what could the city be hoping to gain from intervening in this case?
Well, as Heather said, the mayor announced to the public that she filed this victim impact statement. And by the way, there is some pressure among more progressive members of city council to do something here. They don't like the fact that Solis, as part of this agreement, will get off at the end of this. But basically, these victim impact statements usually come into play during trial or during sentencing, claiming that the city was victimized by Solis allegedly taking bribes here. Judging by the prosecutor's statements, it seems like it's probably not going to have much of an impact on the outcome of this case. It seems like prosecutors are very happy with the return they got from Solis, wearing a wire and being a central part of 2 major investigations, that of commented Mike Madigan and Ed Burke. So I think that they believe that Solis not going to jail, getting the charges dropped is probably worthwhile for the service that he's rendered as an agent of the government here. Of course, the city will make its case, though, and we'll see what that case is.
Paris, is that not a little strange? I mean, we haven't seen the city intervene this way in any other corruption cases for city representatives.
It's certainly not something that I've seen before, but like I mentioned, there is some political pressure. The current alderman that took over for Solis, Byron Sigcho Lopez, has been pretty vocal about his desire that Solis face more punishment than he is right now for the alleged crimes here. So perhaps the mayor is making a political nod here to the more progressive members of city council, saying, hey, my whole brand here is transparency, cleaning up corruption, ending aldermanic prerogative, which, by the way, was a big part of what got Solis in trouble as chair of the zoning committee. So there might be a little politics at play here.
Amanda, bring us up to, or take us back just a little bit. Solis's bribery charge, it dates back to money that he received from a developer in 2015. What happened?
Well, so real briefly here, stepping back, I have to say this move by the Lightfoot administration is certainly an interesting one, because you've got to figure that federal prosecutors are like, hey, wait, what are you talking about? Because Brandis, you just asked it right there. This is for conduct dating back to 2015. He wore a wire for extended period of times with Burke and with Madigan, that they're saying, stop messing up our case, Lightfoot. You should know. You're a former prosecutor yourself. You know how this sort of things works. Just have your press conferences. Don't interfere with our courts. What happened here, and really the conduct that is in the deferred prosecution, is a singular count where allegedly Solis used his powers as chairman of the powerful zoning committee to get campaign contributions as the zoning committee gave its approval, seeking those contributions right then and there, despite warnings from his staff that that might be a bit brazen. You want to maybe disguise this a little bit, don't you think? By the way, this is for a development company connected to the owner of the Reinsdorf of the White Sox and the Bulls. But there's a whole lot more. The Chicago Sun-Times uncovered a federal affidavit where allegedly Solis did a whole lot more than that, was also soliciting, for example, Viagra, massages, stays at a luxury farm by a campaign contributor. So there's a whole lot more. The DPA just focuses on this one.
Okay, so businessman Willie Wilson announced that he is once again running for mayor. Wilson expects to have town hall meetings over the next few months. Here he is this week discussing Chicago's crime rate and police morale.
Crime is high, crime used to be prior to 3 years ago in certain neighborhoods. Now they went out the whole Chicago and suburban as well around the country. So it's all our problem. We got to get in and fix it. Police morale is very low. And those men and women put their life on line out there for us.
So Heather, how does Willie Wilson's entry into this race shape the election?
Well, I think it does two things. One, it reemphasizes the fact that pretty much everybody thinks Mayor Lori Lightfoot is vulnerable if she does run for re-election, as we all expect her to. The second thing is that it sets up a really interesting contest in the Black community in Chicago. Willie Wilson won 13 of 18 wards where majority of voters are Black, and he was a real kingmaker in the 2019 election, where his endorsement of Lori Lightfoot, openly lesbian, married to a woman, had a daughter. Willie Wilson is well known in the Christian Black community, and his endorsement of her served to sort of as a way into that community for her. Now that he's going around telling people that he made a mistake, that he regrets that endorsement, that could have a real impact, and could make it honestly impossible for Lightfoot to get to 50% of the vote in the first round of voting, which is set for February 23rd of next year. So it could have wide-ranging impacts, but like you said earlier, we are 10 months away. A lot of other people are going to get in this race, and it is just going to be, again, a free-for-all.
Now, we said it's 10.5 months away, but that's actually that's not that far away for some of us. So I want to keep it moving and get to Springfield, because in the final days of the spring session, lawmakers pushed through several bills, including one waiving violations and tickets related to carjackings. While calling for stricter penalties, House Republican leader Jim Durkin referenced a family member who was the victim of a carjacking.
My niece was carjacked at 2 o'clock in the afternoon outside her apartment in Lincoln Square. So when I see her over the holidays, she has been traumatized like any other person has been traumatized through such a horrible experience, through no contribution on her own. So she's going to ask, what have you guys done with this horrible, horrible crime wave that's coming to the state of Illinois?
So Amanda, remind us about some of the bills that passed in Springfield before the end of session.
Brandis, there were something like 408 bills that passed, and Illinois, presuming the governor signs these, is set to get, a new rock, a new state reptile. But when it comes to the big ones, they really were focused on the economy / passing a budget, tax relief, and also crime. The issue being that while you're going to have Democrats selling this and saying, hey, we heard your concerns. We passed measures that are going to address crime, funding a whole lot of programs that get to the root of crime, violence prevention efforts, community organizations, the task force that was referenced, allowing police to cooperate. There were also some major bills that did not pass. Those, for example, that the Cook County Sheriff has said are central to being able to crack down on carjackings, and that's being able to trace carjacked cars through help of auto manufacturers. Republicans calling for stiffer penalties and greater debate. This all really goes back to a 2021 major crime overhaul that I think we're going to be hearing a lot about in the days ahead, as before that mayor's race, we've got, of course, the gubernatorial one.
Now, Governor Pritzker, he still needs to sign these bills into law. Of course, Paris, are all of these gonna pass his desk with his signature, or is he gonna let a few of them go?
Well, picking up from where Amanda left off, the thing about ending session with all these bills is now we're going to see weeks of press conferences by the governor and signing ceremonies for these bills. And I think
rallies, really, Paris, right?
Pep rallies, really. And he's got an election, as you mentioned, in November. And, I think with the crime bills, I think he will sign the ones that did pass. I mean, clearly he will, because Democrats politically are a little scared of the crime issue in the political races. Republicans are making that the #1 issue, the crime wave, and touting their belief that Democrats are soft on crime. So Pritzker's going to need some events that make the news, that show Democrats taking action on issues like crime, carjacking, and retail theft. So he will sign those. He will have press conferences that, as Amanda said, will look like pep rallies, and he will hope they make the news reports so voters take a look at them.
Now, a report from the Independent Monitor overseeing the consent decree binding the Chicago Police Department to reform indicates the department is still falling behind in some capacities. Heather, bring us up to speed on what this report says about the status or the progress that CPD is making.
Well, this agreement has been in place for more than 3 years, and while the police department has made some progress towards fulfilling its requirements, it's still behind on a number of issues. And I think most importantly, the independent monitoring team found several areas that the police department has essentially needs to work on immediately, including the foot chase policy and its plan to encourage what the department calls positive interactions with community members. The report was very critical of the department on both of those issues. And I think it's crucial that we're now far enough into this agreement that not only is the department not in full compliance with it, but new problems are popping up. And I think that that will pose a real problem for the department as it attempts to restore or create trust in Chicago's community, where, of course, the department has been accused of repeated misconduct in pretty much every aspect of policing.
Amanda, really quickly, how does this status report compare to where the police department has been in previous status reports?
In terms of a progress report, there was actual progress. I think a 20% jump from the last one and about 70% compliance with the consent decree, which is well above, as I indicated there, what prior reports had shown.
And Heather, there's a bit of news today with regard to the vaccination mandate for Chicago police officers. What's happening there?
Well, today was the day for officers to get their second and final shot if they got the 2-dose Pfizer or Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. And now the ball is really in Mayor Lori Lightfoot's court, how she will discipline those officers who have refused to get vaccinated. And it's clear that part of the solution there has been granting a huge number of exemptions based on religious or medical issues to members of the department. More than 1,000 members of the Chicago Police Department have gotten those exemptions, which still leaves about 700 officers or a little bit more at risk of being disciplined or terminated because of their refusal to get the vaccine.
So Chicago City Clerk Ana Valencia, who's running for Illinois Secretary of State, now she is facing allegations of steering contractual work towards her husband, Rayad Kamzi. Paris, what is the criticism that Valencia is facing here?
Well, her husband is a lobbyist who has lobbied the city, he's lobbied the state, and the big policy achievement for Valencia as city clerk was this city card, ID card that went out to everybody. It turns out, according to this latest reporting, that her lobbyist husband is a partner in the company that got that contract, so got money from that. And then it also turns out that Valencia reportedly lobbied Mayor Lightfoot for a kiosk program to be put in the Illinois Medical District. It turns out, according to this reporting, that her lobbyist husband would have benefited financially from that as well. So this is a very tricky issue for Valencia, because one of the jobs of Secretary of State is to oversee the lobbyist transparency rules for the state. So voters are going to be looking at her record, and she has vowed that her husband will not lobby the state or any state agencies as if she wins that office. She's running, of course, against Alexi Janulius and David Moore in the Democratic primary. But we'll see if that's going to be enough to assuage the concerns here with this lobbying/public official arrangement.
So a new joint analysis by the Daily Line, WBEZ, and Crane Chicago Business looks into city council meeting attendance rates by alderpeople dating back to 2019. Heather, we've got about 45 seconds. What did this analysis find in the way of the average aldermanic attendance? What did it tell us?
That the most veteran alder people are the least likely to actually show up to do the public's business at public meetings. And a lot of them have a lot of excuses about why they haven't made those meetings. What's interesting, though, thanks to the pandemic, the committee meetings are all still virtual. And that boosted attendance from about 60% back in 2019 to about 80% now. We all know it's easier to roll out of bed and throw on a top than to actually make it down to City Hall. So it'll be interesting to see whether those committees stay virtual since more older people happen to be attending them.
Okay, that's Spotlight Politics. Thanks to Heather Sharon, Amanda Vinicky, and Parashutz.